In this video, we're going to discuss some what if scenarios in regards to rapid rehousing exits and how to respond to them in HMIS with the data. So the first scenario we're going to talk about is if a client goes into rapid rehousing and they exit the program without being housed by that rapid rehousing project. So number one is you do not include a housing move-in date. So if a person comes into rapid rehousing, and even if they exit to a permanent supportive housing, like a higher level of care, or even if they go into an apartment, but the rapid rehousing provider never provides rental services or subsidy, you do not enter a housing move-in date. Number two, you make sure the exit destination accurately reflects where the person or family went to. So if they went to emergency shelter, so maybe they stayed in the shelter and they didn't want to engage in services with that particular rapid rehousing project, or if they went to live with family or friends, or whatever scenario really makes sense, make sure that it is accurately reflecting where the person or family went to. And then three, if it's unknown, so if you just don't know where the people went, maybe they left shelter, the shelter doesn't know, and you have no ability to track the family down or the person down to find out where it is that they went to, kind of disappeared, the destination should be no exit interview completed, should be the option of the exit destination. So if a client exited to a higher level of care, so if the client was entered into your program, they have housing established and they have a housing move-in date, you will, if they will not be able to sustain their housing financially and need a higher level of services. So that's what this means. So you've engaged with the client, you've housed them into their project, into your project, into a rapid rehousing provider, but maybe they're kind of reaching their finality with the housing subsidy, it's coming to an end, and you're reaching the 2 years, or if you identify that they really need a higher level of care, so they really need to be referred to permanent supportive housing or to maybe an OMH SPOA, mental health housing, you would do the referral to coordinated entry for permanent supportive or other permanent housing, and wait for them to be housed into that project. And then the destination you're going to choose for if an individual or family goes into a permanent supportive housing or an other permanent housing project will be rental by client with ongoing housing subsidy. And then the rental subsidy type will be other permanent housing dedicated for formerly homeless persons. So another scenario that sometimes stumps individuals or users with data entry is if a rapid rehousing family or individual loses their current housing, but you're going to continue to serve them in your rapid rehousing project and find them new housing. So examples of this might be maybe they got evicted from their current housing for whatever reason, or if there was a fire or flood or codes issue, and that particular project or that particular housing was deemed unfit, and you have to do your housing search, and maybe they have to go back into shelter in the meantime. If there's no break in housing, so if they're still continuing to stay in the housing project, maybe they're just facing eviction, or you don't exit them until they actually lose their housing. So what you would do is if there's no break, you would just, if they didn't go back to shelter, they just stayed in their housing where they're at until you found them new housing, you do not need to exit them. You would just simply rehouse them into a new apartment, and then the housing move-in date does not change. So they're never not in permanent housing. So an example of this would be maybe they're facing eviction, but instead of them ending up back in shelter, having to go stay at a family and friends, you just simply keep them enrolled, and then you find them a new apartment, and then you move from their one apartment into another apartment. Another example would be if maybe there was some code violations, or maybe they do have legal rights to still be in the apartment. However, the city has deemed this an unfit housing situation. They're still living there. They have legal rights to be there, but you still find them another apartment because it's unsafe living conditions. You would still keep them in your project. You would not exit them, and then just move them into a new housing. The other option is if there's a break in housing. So if a family or individual has to go back into emergency shelter, there's a fire in their apartment, they go to the emergency family shelter, or they're hoteled in a hotel motel stay in the agency, or the Department of Social Services pays for that hotel motel stay, that's considered to be a homeless situation. So when a homeless situation happens, you're going to exit them from the rapid rehousing project, but do a new entry for the same day as their exit, but you're going to make sure the housing move-in date is cleared from the new entry. So this is where a homeless situation has happened in the middle of the rapid rehousing program stay. You're going to exit them from HMIS, do a new entry for the same day, clear out the housing move-in date, and start the housing search over again. You'll be adding a new housing move-in date when the individual or family acquires a new permanent residence or apartment, and that's going to be reflected again in an interim review as an update assessment.